Hi, welcome everyone. I don't know how many people are on the call yet, but let's go ahead and get started, and we want to start getting this recorded. We are so happy to have Pastor Richard Crisco on tonight. I'll introduce him in a second, but I wanted Ben to go ahead and, if anybody's new on the call, he can go ahead and share what to do after Pastor Richard speaks for 30 minutes, how the webinar is going to be operated.
Well, hi everybody. I'm Ben. Again, hello. So Pastor Richard's going to be speaking here, and then after we're going to do the question and answer time. So you'll see on the top right of your screen where the console is there, that there's a little icon for looks like a little hand raising your hand. That's how we'll know that you have a question. And there's also a place on the bottom right there, a little flyout that's called questions. So you could also place your questions there. But if you have your hand raised there, we'll do our best to engage you, and you can ask questions to Pastor Richard. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, Pastor Richard Crisco is committed to hosting the presence of the Lord, winning souls, and impacting his community. He's dedicated to living by example, encouraging men and women to live up to their full potential in Christ. His teachings are passionate, humorous, fun, while his humility, integrity, and down-to-earth approach gives him the ability to relate to people. Richard serves as the pastor of student ministry in the midst of the largest revival in America's history at Brownsville Assembly of God in Pensacola, Florida. Following his tenure as pastor of student ministries, he served as the president of Brownsville Revival School of Ministry. Woohoo! In May 2004, Richard came to serve as the lead pastor of Rochester Christian Church in Rochester, Michigan. He also leads Empowering Kingdom Leaders, a ministry to help raise up the next generation leaders. Pastor Richard, can you, before you get on your teaching, can you share a little bit about your Empowering Kingdom Leadership?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. What we're doing tonight is a huge part of my heart. I've always loved discipling. I've loved pouring into other leaders. And Empowering Kingdom Leaders is a ministry that we have developed to just pour into leaders all around the world. We literally have, I think the last count was close to 4,000 leaders that we minister to on a monthly basis. And just giving them materials, encouragement, and supporting both missionaries and people all across the United States. And most of the material is absolutely free. In fact, I hope all of the materials can be free within the next couple of months. All of my leadership material will be absolutely free to everyone. So if you want to look for some, if I speak your language, check it out. Maybe it'll be a source of encouragement for you. So, Elizabeth, you want me to go right into my teaching, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Hey, I was so excited when Elizabeth asked if I possibly would spend an evening with you guys, and it really is a privilege and an honor. I've been praying about what to share with you, and I just want to first commend you. I believe the greatest investment that you can ever make is an investment in yourself. Investing in an education, investing by getting mentors in your life, investing by reading books and getting connected to podcasts that will teach you and help you to grow. And so I just want to commend you for even being a part of this vision of connecting generational leaders, and I believe the Lord will reward you for it. You know, when you think of leadership, there's so many different aspects of leadership. But I want to talk tonight about one that you may not hear a whole lot about, but I think it really is a core and essential part of leadership. I want to talk about the heart of a leader. The heart of a leader. I remember when the Lord called me in the ministry. It was January 18th, 1982 at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I remember shortly after that, my senior pastor took me to the very first ministerial gathering I ever went to. And I was so proud because he was introducing me as his spiritual Timothy. And so I'm just a 22-year-old punk, just so excited about God calling me into the ministry, and I'm going to get to share the gospel with people and love on people. And I'm at this pastoral gathering, and I'm being quiet because I'm the young guy, I'm the new guy, and I'm just listening to these conversations of all these pastors, of all these ministers. And I hope that I'm wrong, but my 22-year-old ears, this is what I heard. I'm sure that it wasn't accurate, but this is what I heard. I heard them all complaining about ministry. I heard them talking about how mean their people were, how stupid they were, how they were just sheep bit, and and I remember going to my hotel room that night, and I cried myself to sleep. And I remember saying, Lord, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I signed up for. But at that night, I made a vow to myself that I was not going to become that way. And the Lord allowed me, right at the very beginning of my ministry, to understand the value of maintaining a pure heart. A pure heart. Proverbs 4:23 says this. Listen to the terminology. Above all else. Now this is like, okay, everything else I'm saying, that's good stuff, but above everything else, guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. Or guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Can I tell you, the heart of a leader, whether you're in full-time ministry or if you're a business owner or whatever leadership role you play, the heart of the leader is so critical to the success and the effectiveness of your business, of your ministry. Just think about it just for a moment. A leader has to be a visionary and a dreamer. He can't do that unless he has a healthy heart. A leader has to believe in people. He has to, first of all, draw people to them. He has to then learn how to develop people. Then he has to delegate and send them out. A leader can't do that if they don't have a heart that believes in people. A leader can't do that if their heart is not healthy. A leader has to be a person of courage, because you have to take things on, and you're gonna be attacked and all those type of things. And you know what? You can't have courage if you're weak of heart. A leader will attract, and they will reproduce after his or her own likeness. In other words, Elizabeth could finish the quote for me, or she should be able to, because John Maxwell taught me years ago, you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And if a leader doesn't have a healthy heart, he's not going to reproduce healthy workers, healthy followers, healthy people in his church or in his business. You show me a healthy business, and I can tell you right off the bat, it's led by a healthy leader. You show me a healthy church, it's got a healthy leader. Okay, but a leader has to have a healthy heart, because healthy hearts will attract healthy hearts, and healthy hearts will reproduce healthy hearts. To be honest with you, here in Michigan, we're having our primary tomorrow, election for president. I'm scared at the candidates that I'm looking at that people are being attracted to. It shows how far our nation has fallen. Our nation is running in fear, and they're running in anger, and they are voting out of their fear and out of their anger. But for us to be effective leaders, whether, again, you're in business or in a church, you have to have a healthy heart. So let me share with you just 5 areas that you've got to learn to guard your heart on, okay? And again, whether you're in ministry or business, it all will come into play. The first one is this: guard your heart from the wounds of ministry, or guard your heart from the wounds of people, okay? Listen, as ministers, we are called to go and to help the hurting. Now that sounds awesome, but can I remind you, hurting people hurt people. Hello. And we're called to go into their arena and help them, knowing that they're going to turn around most likely and inflict wounds upon us as we're in that process. That's what we're called to. We're called to help those who are hurting, realizing that we're actually placing ourselves in harm's way. See, people are going to question, as a leader, people are going to question your motives. They're going to second guess you, okay? And they're going to hurt you. And if you're not careful, when people begin to question you and they begin to attack you, you can find yourself getting cynical, okay? But you've got to learn to control your attitude, guard your heart, okay? And determine that you're not going to let poison get within you. I often remind my staff, whenever you're wounded, you basically only have two options, okay? You can either be like Christ and forgive, or you can get stuck in that memory and agonize in your wounded experience for the rest of your life. I know way too many people. I know way too many ministers who they've gone through and they survived difficult times, but they stink the rest of their life. They just have this stench upon them. They're repugnant. There's a bitterness in their voice, and there's a ugliness on their face. The thing I love about the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is not that they came through the fiery furnace, but they didn't even smell like smoke. We gotta learn to guard our heart. I love what Oswald Sanders said. He said this: often the crowd does not recognize a leader until he's gone, and then they build a monument for him with the stones that they threw at him when he was alive. Let that sink in. Many times people don't recognize you're a leader until you're gone. Then they take the very stones that they threw at you and they want to build a monument to you. You've got to not let your heart get wounded by people. As a leader, you've got to guard your heart. Number two, you've got to guard your heart against unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations. I'm dumbfounded when I listen to my peers and I listen to leaders and I hear the expectations that they have. For example, let me give you one. One of the reasons why I'm excited about being with you guys is because of Elizabeth and her desire to honor leaders and to join the generations in honoring one another. Okay, I love that, and it's one of my core messages. Having said that, can I give you an unexpected expectation, unrealistic expectation? And that's this: why do we as pastors and why do we as leaders expect people to honor us when they didn't even honor Jesus? Think about that for a moment. Why do we expect them to honor us when they didn't even honor Jesus? So listen, whenever someone dishonors me, I let it roll off my back. I go, you know what? That's their problem. It's not mine. It's their issue, not mine. And I'm not going to let that get inside of me because of an unexpected, unrealistic expectation. You know, why do we expect people to be grateful when Jesus said we should do all things without expecting a thank you, but always be sure to give a thank you? Okay? But can I tell you on this issue of honoring, here's what I have noticed. We always reap what we sow. If you will be a leader who will learn to honor his superiors, honor his peers, and honor his subordinates, you will, for the most part, be able to reap honor, because you do reap what you sow. I have an amazing church here at Rochester, Michigan. Amazing people who love me and adore me, and they honor me, but it's because I honor them first. I don't put myself above them. I lower myself below them. I serve them. I honor them. I put them first, and thus I reap the benefit of it. But a lot of times our heart gets wounded because we have an unrealistic expectation. Doesn't the Bible say, hope deferred makes the heart sick? We've got to have a healthy heart. A third thing that I would recommend that we got to guard our heart against is apathy. Apathy. Because if you're a good leader, what will happen is you will rise quickly. But all of us have a plateau. All of us have a ceiling. And all of us have a place where maybe we have exceeded most everybody else that we know, and we have a tendency of just kind of leveling off and beginning to coast. Let me remind you that yesterday's success could be today's worst enemy. Yesterday's success could be today's worst enemy. And we need to always shake apathy when we see that. Let me give you another warning. Success comes from the Lord. And whether, again, you're in full-time ministry or in business, if you will learn how to spend time with the Lord, He will give you keys, and He will give you stepping stones, and He will reward you openly for that which you have done in secret. The problem with that is, the moment that you enter into that success realm, everybody wants a piece of you. It's hard to know who your friends are when you're successful because they want a piece of you. And it's not that they care about you, it's they want a piece of your success pie. And if you're not careful, the next thing you know, you're so busy. You're busy working the job. You're busy doing the ministry. You're doing this, that, and the other. You're doing 1,000 things because why? You're successful and everybody wants a piece of you. And the next thing you know, what happens is you're so busy that without realizing it, you missed out your time with the Lord. And the very thing that brought you success will also bring you destruction. You gotta fight apathy, because passion and vision is birthed in the prayer closet. I have a very successful businessman in my church. He started his business in his basement 11 and a half years ago when I came here as his pastor. Started in his basement. He now, last year, his business did $50 million of business in 1 year. He has like close to 100 employees. But let me tell you about this business leader. I can go to the church early in the morning, and it's not unusual to see him in the prayer room of our church for an hour before he goes to work. This is a businessman, not a pastor. But he understands the importance of staying in the prayer closet, getting a strategy from heaven for his business, and keeping that passion and that vision. He's not going to let busyness keep him away from the prayer chamber. I love what Billy Beacham said. He said this. He said, if you're doing more in ministry than you can bathe in prayer, you're setting yourself up for a great fall. If you're doing more in ministry than you can bathe in prayer, you're setting yourself up for a great fall. You got to guard yourself against apathy. You got to stay sharp, and you do that in the prayer closet. Number 4, you got to guard yourself. You got to guard your heart against pride or despair. Against pride or despair. One thing that I learned early in my ministry is never believe the press report, okay? Because you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are, okay? I often wondered, why did the Lord let me be youth pastor at the Brownsville Revival? I've often asked that. I'm just an average guy, okay? And I don't know all the reasons, but I do know a couple of them. But one of them was this. I had been in youth ministry for 12 years. And I always had a youth group about 100, 125, 135, around up in there. Okay? If I was this great youth pastor, okay, it would have exploded overnight. But I went for 12 years, just average Joe Blow. So when revival came, and all of a sudden, the whole world started inviting me to come and preach at these big conferences, 5,000 teenagers, 10,000 teenagers, 2,000 youth pastors, Australia, Norway, Germany, you name it, all over the world. It was easy for me to realize, okay, I'm the same Richard Crisco I was before. I am not near as good as they say I am, okay? And to prove that, I'm now back at a small church. We had 650 last Sunday. I mean, nothing big. I'm not that big. But during the Brownsville revival, I was bigger than life to everybody. You're never as big as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are. You've got to guard your heart against pride, because pride, I believe, may be a leader's worst enemy. Pride will destroy you. Let me just give you a couple of things that pride will do. Pride will cause a leader to take credit from others, including the Lord. A good leader is willing to take the responsibility of poor performance by their followers and give recognition to those who do well. Let me say that again. A good leader is willing to take responsibility for the bad performance of one of their employees. But they also always give credit to those who do well. But you know what? When you're prideful, all of a sudden you start blaming your employees for the things that they did wrong, and you start taking credit for the things that they did right. And if you're not careful, you'll even take credit from the Lord, and you begin to heap that upon yourself. So pride will cause you to take credit away from others. The second thing pride will do is pride will actually make a leader unteachable. And this to me is one of the scariest things. Proverbs 13:10 says this: pride only breeds quarrels, but wisdom is found in those who will take advice. Proverbs 11:2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. See, we've got to constantly be challenging ourselves to be growing and learning, to even challenge our theology. Can I tell you the number one prayer that we pray at Rochester? It's, Lord, help us unlearn some things. Because one of the things I have learned is it's not what you don't know that will hurt you. It's what you do know that is not so that will hurt you. Because when you think you got it all figured out, you no longer are trying to learn. You no longer are truly listening. You're kind of half-hearted listening. You go, yeah, I know that story, or I know how to do this, I know how to do that. But you're not really trying to learn anymore. We need to learn how to unlearn some things. There's things that I learned in the Brownsville revival that I had to unlearn. It doesn't work anymore because I'm not in that revival setting. Even though I'm pastoring a revived church and we have a powerful move of the Spirit and all that, but the situation is different. And a leader, by the way, a great leader is not one that has all the right answers. A great leader is the one that knows the right questions. The next time you read through the Gospels, notice how Jesus answered almost every question. He almost answered every question with another question, as if to say, all right, I know what you're wanting to understand and I know what you're wanting to learn, but you're never going to get the right answer by asking that question. There are so many churches, they're stuck. They've been stuck for decades because they're asking the same questions they asked 50 years ago, and they get the same answer, and it's not the right answer. There are businesses that are stuck because they're still asking the same questions they asked 30 years ago. You've got to have the courage to unlearn things and to ask tough questions and learn new things. The world we're living in is changing so quickly. And we have got to be learning and evaluating constantly. But a prideful leader, they don't have time for books. They don't have time for webinars. They don't have time for conferences. They don't have time for podcasts. I still read at least one book a week, many times two books a week. I've got to constantly be learning and growing, because a leader is a learner, and the day he stops learning is the day he stops leading. Pride also will rob a leader of compassion. And again, whether you're a pastor or a business owner, you have to deal with people with compassion. But a prideful person, all of a sudden, they lose sight of the responsibility of taking care of their employees. They lose sight of the responsibility of taking care of the people that look up to them, to help them and to nurture them. But a prideful leader, all of a sudden, they become a dictator and they become heartless. And the fourth thing that a pride will do is pride will make a leader vulnerable. Vulnerable. It's the reason why when I look at even some of our presidential candidates, I just get so scared, because I see such arrogance and I see such pride and I see such meanness in their spirit. And I'm thinking, our nation is racing towards such judgment, and we're rallying around these personalities. We need to humble ourselves and be compassionate and caring. The Bible says that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. James 4:6 says that God opposes the proud. So as a leader, we've got to guard our heart against both pride, but also despair. You know, encourage yourself in the Lord. Learn how to lift your spirits and understand you're never as bad as people say you are either. But the fifth thing and the last thing I want to share on just guarding our heart, and then I'll open up the floor for questions, is as a leader, you've got to guard your heart from self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency. Whenever we start a new task, whether it's a position at a job, starting a business, I own 2 businesses of my own, pastoring a church, anytime you start something, you usually are very scared, you're uncertain, you're not sure if you're going to survive, don't know if I could do this, don't know if people will listen to me, don't know if people will follow me, and we really crawl and to the Lord, and Lord, help me with this adventure. But you know, after a while we go, hey, I got this, I can do this now. And if we're not careful, we can begin to think that, hey, I can do this, I can grow this business, or I can grow this church, or I could do that. Can I remind you that if Jesus said that he could do nothing of himself unless he has the Father's help, hello, how much more do you and I need the help of the Father? But ministry is not what we do anyway. Ministry is an overflow of who we are. I think the greatest thing that we can do as leaders is to become godly people that are those who follow us can look up to and know that they can follow us, and that we'll take care of them, and that we'll lead them in a path of righteousness. To be people who rely upon the Lord at all times. I tell people that I mentor, especially when I'm dealing with preaching, I say, the day that I can step in a pulpit and preach without fear and trembling is the day I need to stop preaching. The day that I could do a webinar, do you know how many hours I prayed about this webinar? Do you know how many hours I prayed and to put together this lesson? I spent at least 8, maybe 10 hours just on this lesson for a 30-minute lesson. And I could do leadership with my eyes closed. But the day that we become self-reliant is the day that our leadership is going downhill. We need to always make sure that we rely upon the Lord. Paul said to the church at Galatia, he said, Oh, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Having begun in the Spirit, you now think that you're going to finish this thing? You're going to attain your goal through human effort? And listen, again, whether you're a pastor or a business owner, that's your ministry. Businessmen are called to business. Leaders in the marketplace are called. That's your calling. And you need to rely upon the Lord just as much at your business 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, as the pastor does of your local church. We cannot be self-reliant. But again, probably something I hardly ever hear anybody talk about is the heart of the leader. I'll close with this there. I remember at the beginning of the Brownsville revival, I almost quit. I almost resigned. Not because I didn't agree with it or I was glad to be there, but I felt like that I was the weak link. I remember I was sitting on the platform and I'm sitting there with John Kilpatrick and Steve Hill and Linda Cooley and then later on Dr. Brown and I'm thinking, man, what am I doing up here? I'm just an average guy. And I felt like I was the weak link. And I was going to resign so that somebody better could come in and help in the youth ministry. And one morning as I was praying about resigning, I remember the Holy Spirit stopped me. And he said, Richard, he said, let me tell you something. When I go to measure a man, I never put the tape measure around his head. I put it around his heart. And I may not be the most talented man. I may not be the most intelligent man. I may not be the most gifted man. But God gave me a good heart. And a heart of a leader may be the most important factor there is today. Because today, information doesn't mean a thing. You can give me any topic you want to. Let me get my smartphone, and within seconds, I can give you all the information you want. Information is no longer valuable, but heart is precious. People want to serve a church that's led with a heart. They want to be a part of an organization like Chick-fil-A that has a heart. I don't know if you know the latest. I just saw a commercial. We don't even have Chick-fil-A here in Michigan. I need Chick-fil-A, Jesus. But Chick-fil-A is now putting a challenge. Put your cell phone on off and put it in this box. Have family time over your meal. Come back and tell us that you did this, and we'll give you a free ice cream cone. That is a business that cares about families, that has a heart for family. People want to work for those kind of leaders. Guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. Thank you.
Wow, Pastor Richard, that was awesome. Wow, I kind of have a question. First of all, how do you survive with no Chick-fil-A?
we run over to Ohio every once in a while. No, seriously. So this is funny, okay? So anytime I go somewhere to preach at a conference or someplace, and they pick me up at the airport, and they go, "Where you want to eat?" I go, "Do you have a Chick-fil-A?" So I get my Chick-fil-A whenever I leave the state.
Wow, something's wrong in Michigan. You need to champion that one.
I know it. We need salvation.
Well, one of the questions, we'll go ahead, Ben. We'll let anyone that has questions go ahead and raise their hand. I'll ask the first question and Ben, let me know if anyone's raised their hands with questions. I'm sure they have some questions. One of the things you mentioned about, Pastor Richard, is about the plateau of a leader. You said there's a time. I've never heard that before. But can you explain? I mean, it makes sense. It totally makes sense.
Everybody has a plateau. Okay, we look at certain people as like measuring sticks. For example, if you think modern healing, you might go, well, Benny Hinn. Well, Benny Hinn has his plateau, and there's greater miracles than what we've seen with Benny Hinn. Everybody, when they hit that ceiling, they'll bounce down, and because we have a tendency of measuring ourselves against each other, okay? So, for example, I mean, even like big church, we think big church, we might think of like Joel Osteen, which he has, who knows, I don't know how many people, 50,000 people. And we go, but that's still a ceiling. Why not have a church of 100,000? Why not have a church, Youngie Cho in Korea had a church of 500,000 at one time. But everybody has a plateau, and we need to recognize that we all have that, and press to break through, and not settle somewhere. It's not settled with our prayer life or with our effectiveness in ministry, in our preaching ability, or the size of our ministry, or whatever. But to always, Elizabeth, I've always I try not to compare myself with other people. Anytime I compare myself with somebody else, I always lose. Because either I'm not as big as they are, and so I get discouraged, or they're not as big as I am, and I get haughty.
Wow.
I try not to compare myself with anybody. I just want to be the best Richard Crisco I can be. And that's all that, when I stand before God on Judgment Day, that's all he's going to ask of me. He's not going to say, was your ministry bigger than the guys down the road? He was going to want to know, did I reach my potential? And I just want to make sure that I don't fall short of that.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, Alexis, I know you have a question, don't you?
Hello, Alexis.
Oh, I didn't hit it, but yes, I would think of a really good question. Brother or Pastor Richard, what would you say to a staff pastor?
Brother Richard to you. Brother Richard to you.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Richard. What would you say to a pastor who's on staff and they are serving a lead pastor, and the lead pastor, he's just dealing with some areas such as he's been wounded in the past, and he's kind of dealing with some unrealistic expectations for his staff, and he has put that on his staff, and it's really just starting to take a toll as far as the unity and the trust of the entire team. So as a staff member, how do you deal with that without getting bitter and still loving the person who you're serving and leading? Because in spite of it all, they're still your spiritual authority.
Wow. Alexis, that is such an amazing question. And part of what makes it so amazing is it's predominant everywhere.
Yeah.
Most leaders have been wounded, and they have not been healed out of that wound. And so their staff suffers drastically.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice to you, first of all, is it helps me whenever I know the backstory of a person that I, in this case, have to be submitted to. And if I know the wounds that they went through, it helps me to have a little extra patience and a little extra grace when they may be harmful toward me or sharp toward me. Let me recommend a great book. A great book is A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. A Tale of Three Kings. Amazing book. It's a book on Absalom, David, and Saul. King Saul, King David, and King Absalom. And it will really help with this situation. But whenever if I can understand why somebody is being unrealistic or harsh or whatever term you want to put to it, if I understand what's causing that, for some reason it helps me to have a little bit more patience and understanding and care. And I really ask the Holy Spirit to give me love that literally covers a multitude of faults and a multitude of sins. And I choose to magnify the wonderful things in that person's life and to minimize those things. We have a tendency, when things can get edgy, we have a tendency of focusing in on those negative things, those negative behaviors, those negative events, and then we forget all the beautiful things about that person. Why don't we reverse that? I remember my marriage almost fell apart around the 7th, 8th year of my marriage because I was focusing on all the 3 negative things that my wife did. And I forgot the thousands of wonderful things that my wife did. And it was whenever I stopped zeroing in on those negative and I start magnifying the beautiful, those negative just seem to be so little insignificant. I would recommend you do that. Magnify the beautiful things of your pastor or your leader, your business, whatever, whoever it is. Appreciate your job and their leadership and all the great things they do. It will again give you that strength and that ability. And what we'll also do is I believe it will endear you to your pastor and him to you to a place that eventually God could actually use you to maybe bring healing to that area of that pastor's life. But you got to wait till that relationship's there and that door's there, okay? Now, we're talking, Alexis, and you guys know me pretty well. My greatest gift is gift of restoration, okay? And so this is my strength. But these are some of the keys that I do when I'm in that situation. Does that help?
That's good. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan has a question.
Hey there. Loved your teaching. I have a question. You were mentioning about settling and don't settle for where you are. Go higher. And you mentioned a couple high-profile name leaders. How do you not settle for where you are, but be content and grateful for what you do have and where you are in ministry and leadership and what God's given you?
Absolutely. I think part of the great question, Jonathan, because there is always a holy tension there, isn't there? There's just this holy tension. I think one of the things is never look for, listen, understand that success is not a destination. Success is a journey. Let that sink in. Whenever I first went into youth ministry, I used to think if I could just have 50 kids, I'd be happy. I got to 50 kids, I wasn't happy. Oh, if I could just have 100 kids, I'd be happy. I got to 100 kids, I wasn't happy. When I was at Brownsville, 1,000 kids in my youth group didn't make me happy. I had other things that make me happy at that point. But I'm just saying that there's not going to be a place where you're going to ever be satisfied. You're always going to want more. But I think it's important to celebrate where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate progress, not perfection, is something that I speak on all the time. Celebrate progress, not perfection. So I'm very grateful. Jonathan, every day of my life, I'm extremely grateful of how good God is to me.
Yeah.
And out of that gratitude, it gives me energy to continue to just try to grow a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay? So I work out of that gratitude of where I'm at. And I remind myself, Jonathan, that anytime you're coasting, you're not going uphill.
Mm.
Okay? Just know that. You're not going uphill. So I don't let myself coast very long. I probably should celebrate a little bit more than I do, but I celebrate and then I just keep going.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh, great question, Jonathan. Thanks.
Hey, Ben, do we have any other questions?
Not at this time, but some of the people weren't on when I announced it initially. So if anyone has a question, you can see in your top right little flyout menu, there's a little hand that you can click to get a hand raise. Here we have another question now. From Ariel. Hello?
Ariel,
All
are
right.
you there?
Yeah, I guess I'm unmuted right now. Hey, Pastor Richard, Brother Richard.
Hey,
It's
Ariel.
Ariel. Hey, first off, I want to thank you so much for being such a great example for me while I was at Brownsville. When I left Brownsville, I became a youth pastor in Philadelphia, and I modeled a lot of my youth pastorate after your model, and you were such a great help for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm currently in my second youth pastorate, and I find that this generation of young people is so different than the one that I youth pastored back just a decade ago.
Okay.
And what I find is that I'm having a lot more conversations even with pastors, and my pastors are a little bit younger, and they have a little bit more of a modern take on things. What I'm finding is that I personally, you know, I feel like at times I'm a little stuck on the Brownsville model.
Okay.
And I heard you say that it took you a while to mold yourself out of that. I don't know if you can give like certain examples of things that you did to help you, or things that you saw that needed to change in your current church versus your pastorate in Brownsville.
Yeah. So, Ariel, I think if you even want to go and listen to my sermons, you can listen to our podcast absolutely free. Okay. You can either do that on YouTube or on any kind of podcast, just Rochester Christian Church, or search my name. Okay. I think you'll see my preaching style is different. Okay. I am a much kinder preacher. But I don't water down the message. Okay? So I don't water down the message. I still say the same thing. I'm just much kinder. But, you know, for example, the church I went to, they experienced 5 years of revival too. Okay? And it was interesting because I felt like that all the right things that we did at Brownsville, they did. And in my opinion, that's all it was, my opinion, the wrong things that we did, they were doing wrong. So I just went in and changed the wrong things. But they were so excited when they found out that I was actually going to become their pastor. They're like, we can't believe it. Richard Crisco is going to come to our small church. Because our church was only 225 when I went there. Can't believe he's coming to our church. And one of the very first things that I did is I dismantled the prayer team.
Wow.
You know, the ones that get to pray for people when they come to the front, and those who catch them, and the cloth catch the droppers. I dismantled them all. I said, you're all dismissed. We don't need you anymore. And they're like, what? Oh, no, he's destroying the place. And I said, because the last time I read my Bible, everybody has the power of prayer. And the reason why we had a prayer team at Brownsville was because we didn't know who was coming in the building, and we didn't want just anybody praying for anybody. That reason is not here. We're all home folks. We are a church family, and we all have the power of prayer. And as long as we have a prayer team, we are subliminally teaching everybody else that unless you are selected to be on the prayer team, you don't have the capability of laying hands on somebody and God using you. So I'm dismantling the prayer team. Okay? That's just one example. There's a lot of things that we do that, for example, at Brownsville, there was a reason for a prayer team. That was important. But in my situation, it wasn't necessary. So why continue to do that? All I'm doing now is copying something that was successful in another situation without even analyzing what was the purpose behind it. And so things are changing all the time, and we need to be constantly reevaluating, okay, why we're doing things. Is there a more effective way without changing the message? And so I'm constantly, in fact, listen, maybe I'm in my midlife crisis, but I'm kicking every wall I can find, and it's fun because I'm finding out that there's a lot of walls that are not necessary. And I have such freedom. It is so fun. Yeah. But, you know, because I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I've been there. I've done that. I've been on the biggest platforms. I've done everything. Who cares if I ever speak at another conference? I really don't care. So it's so freeing. So just don't Don't be afraid to challenge some of your mindsets. Yeah. But my problem, Ariel, and I don't know exactly what you mean with this generation, but we are getting further and further away from the gospel. My key verse that I've been hanging my hat on now for the last 3 or 4 years is where Jesus came to the religious leaders of his day, and he said this: "You are in error for 2 reasons. You don't know the power of God, and you don't know the Scriptures."
Right.
When I look at the American church today, it scares me, because the average American church and people in our church are afraid of the power of God, and they sure don't know the Scriptures. And we are in such error for the same reason they were back then. And we have gotten, listen, I am unapologetically a revivalist, and will be all the days of my life.
Yeah.
Okay? I will be. It's about the power of God, and it's about the Word of God. And now, that might look a little different, but it will always be my DNA. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pastor Richard, one question while we wait to see if there's any other questions. How do you, because, I mean, you're known for leadership. You have a whole ministry. I don't know if it's a ministry, that Empowering Kingdom Leaders. How do you choose, because you see through the eyes of a leader. I mean, obviously you're a Christian, but a lot of times when God's called you to leadership, to raise up next, you're looking for the people to raise up and to pour into. Yeah. What are some of the things you look for when you're looking to pour into someone? Because that's your time and love and effort. What are some of the things that you just are like, okay, I'm going to pour into that person?
Yep. First thing I look for is teachability. Because you can't teach somebody that doesn't want to learn. So I want somebody that's teachable. Secondly, I want somebody that has character and integrity. You cannot teach character, okay? Character is something that's developed by the Holy Spirit and that person yielding themselves. And we have made a huge mistake on developing talent that supersedes character. And so what we're doing is we're creating all these second Satans. Anytime your talent supersedes your character, you're setting yourself up to be a second Satan. So I don't care about talent. I used to look for talent. I don't even look for talent anymore. I look for, first of all, are they teachable? Paul said, look for those who are teachable, who can teach other men. I look for character, and I look for people who actually believe in me. Okay, those are the first 3 things that I look for. I don't care. I honestly don't care about their ability, their talent, or their intellect. I look for heart. I look for servanthood, and those are the people that I'm willing to pour my heart into.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ben, do we have any other questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Pastor Richard, before we get off, thank you again so much for being with us. But I wanted you to share again, since more people came on, about Empowering Kingdom Leaders. Kind of share real quick about your heart, why you started that, and also anyone that is on here now or watches the replay of it, like how can they connect with learning, like kind of being, we'll say, mentored by your product that's already out there, or get your blogs, or how can they connect more with you?
Yeah. Well, the ministry is entitled Empowering Kingdom Leaders. So you can just go to empoweringkingdomleaders.com or org or something of that nature. And our purpose is to inspire and to instruct kingdom leaders, both in the business place as well as in the church. And so my dream is I do not want to stay at Rochester too long. Meaning, I have watched my peers stay at a church beyond their peak. We are in a marathon where we have to pass the baton on to the next generation. I've already think I have identified my predecessor, and I'm already developing him. I've already talked to him about taking the church. I've already developing him, speaking into his life, helping him with his weak areas. And that's still, probably at least 6 years away. I'm 54. When I'm 60, I want to be at a position that if I don't feel like that I'm still effective, I can pass the church on to the next pastor and pass the baton on when it's supposed to be. When you're in a relay race, you have to be within a certain spot when you pass that baton. I don't want to be there too long. And so my long-time dream is that I can pass that baton on, and then I can give my life for the rest of my life just traveling and visiting my sons and daughters in the Lord and ministering revival services at night for them and do leadership training for their staff, for their elders, for their church leaders. And so leadership and discipleship has always been a huge part of my DNA. And so Empowering Kingdom Leaders is the nonprofit organization that we're developing that is for that platform. And like I said, most of our material, a lot of our material is free. I'm in the process of making all of it absolutely free. It's kind of a challenge I'm taking. In business, you buy and sell. There's nothing wrong with buying and selling. I have no problem with people buying and selling stuff in the church at all. But I'm trying to become more and more kingdom, and in the kingdom you give and receive. And so I just want to give my stuff away, and if somebody wants to make a donation, they can. But that's my dream. I just want to help leaders both in the church as well as in the kingdom, in the marketplace, reach their full potential in the Lord.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so they'll be able to go to their website. Do you mind praying just a prayer over everyone that's on here?
Love to. Yeah, thank you. Well, Father, I'm just so thankful that you have called each one of us into the field as leaders, some over ministries, others over businesses. I thank you for counting us faithful, calling us into ministry. And I ask, Father, that you would help us to become the best that we are capable of being for your glory and for your honor. I said you help us to have a hunger to learn and to grow and to give ourselves away, to always lift you up and lift other people up and allow you to change their lives. Father, I thank you for Elizabeth. I thank you for this ministry. I thank you for these who have participated today. And I ask that you bless each of them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, Pastor Richard, it was so awesome having you on there. It's such a privilege, and you're definitely one of my heroes as a leader. And I mean, when I get up to Michigan, I'm going to have to come visit you. But also, just thank you for loving the next generation of leaders. Yeah. So we so love and respect you.
Anytime for you or anybody, just give me a call. I'll be glad to do what I can.
All right. Thanks, Pastor Richard. Have a great evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.